Have you ever walked into a room and felt eyes quietly shift toward you? Not because you said anything, not because you did anything loud, but because something in you stirred the air, almost like your presence carried weight. Strange, right? It's not something you can fake. It's not a trick. It's something people feel. But here's the real question. Why does this kind of energy intimidate some people? Why do some pull away, act defensive, or even shrink back when you're just being? Why do people sense something strong in you and react in ways you can't explain? Maybe you've noticed it before. A woman who was warm at first suddenly becomes quiet. A friend starts joking nervously. A stranger gives you that half smile but can't hold your gaze for long, and you're left wondering, what did I do? But here's the twist. It's not about what you did. Most men are told, give more, chase more, prove yourself, show your aura, be the nice guy, the provider, the everything, but no one tells you that real presence isn't loud. It's not needy, it doesn't chase, it doesn't explain itself, it just is. When a man starts to detach from the noise of proving, when he lives from self-worth, purpose, and a calm inner state, his energy changes. People feel it before he says a word, and ironically, that's when people start to get intimidated. But here's the key. This isn't about playing games. It's not manipulation. It's not pretending to be cold or distant. It's about building a life so full, so anchored, that your mere absence or silence creates space. Space that makes people curious, drawn in, wanting to understand. And today, we're diving deep into this. By the end of this video, you'll understand why this energy naturally makes people respect you, desire your presence, and sometimes even fear losing it. No chasing, no tricks, just you, fully standing in your own gravity. But first, have you ever wondered if your energy is doing this right now without you even knowing? Let's find out. Sometimes, it's not the words that shake people, it's the silence, that quiet space between sentences when you don't rush to fill the air, when you simply look, observe, exist. That's where the real weight of your presence shows up. Have you ever noticed how some people get uncomfortable when you don't rush to talk? They fidget, they break eye contact, they start explaining themselves, even when you didn't ask anything. It's almost like your silence makes them hear themselves louder. Why is that? Why does your calm make others restless? Why does your lack of reaction make people reveal their insecurities without you saying a word? Why do some interpret your quiet as judgment when in truth you're just being? Here's the thing most men never realize. When your energy is stable, it acts like a mirror. A still lake reflects everything. When you stop chasing approval and stop performing, you stop trying to impress, and suddenly, your silence becomes power. People aren't used to that. Most men flood conversations with noise. They talk to prove. They explain to be accepted. They chase reactions. But when a man is detached from that need, when he carries himself with internal calm and doesn't force connection, others feel it deeply. And for some, that's intimidating. Because your presence exposes their noise, it makes them aware of their own scattered energy. This is the first real sign that your energy intimidates people. Your silence makes them uneasy, not because you're trying to scare anyone, not because you're playing games, but because you've built an inner world that doesn't rely on their reaction. Your attention is no longer desperate currency, it's rare, scarce, weighted. Think about it. When was the last time you sat in a conversation and didn't rush to respond? When was the last time your calm made someone talk more, almost nervously? Have you ever noticed how people sometimes apologize for things you didn't even bring up? That's the power of stillness. It's not about being cold. It's not about acting like a statue. It's about owning your space fully and allowing silence to do the talking. Women feel this too. When you're not chasing every moment to entertain her, when you can sit in quiet confidence, she starts to feel you differently. Your absence of performance creates a natural tension, not forced, not manipulative, real. Most men can't hold that tension. They crack under silence, they fill it with jokes, bragging, or questions that try too hard. But the man who doesn't rush stands out. He's the center, not the satellite. And that, my friend, is intimidating in the best way possible. It signals strength, depth, a calm power that doesn't need approval to exist. You ever walked into a room and felt eyes shift? Not because you said anything, not because you did anything loud, but because the way you entered carried a different weight. That quiet moment when conversations lower a bit, when heads subtly turn, when someone stumbles on their sentence. It's not magic, it's energy, the kind that doesn't announce itself, it just arrives. Here's the real question: why do some men walk in and blend into the noise, while others walk in, say nothing, and still change the temperature of the room? Why do some people adjust their posture when you stand near them? Why do some become overly talkative or strangely quiet when your presence enters? Why does your energy shift the dynamic without effort? The truth is, your self-possession is louder than any words. When a man walks in fully grounded, detached from the need to please, chasing nothing, owning his lane, people feel it. It interrupts their autopilot. Most people live externally, scattered, plugged into every distraction. But when someone walks in with quiet purpose, it's like a sudden gust of fresh air. It wakes something up, and for many, that's intimidating, not because you're threatening, but because your grounded energy reminds them of what they lack. It reflects the chaos they try to hide. This is the second sign that your energy intimidates people. Your presence changes the atmosphere. It's not about arrogance. It's not about walking like a king. It's about the way you carry yourself when you're not begging the world to notice you. You move with a rhythm that's internally set, not externally triggered. Think about this. Have you ever entered a group and noticed someone suddenly try to one-up you for no reason, or someone go out of their way to explain themselves to you, even though you didn't ask, or a woman suddenly adjust her body language, either more composed or slightly nervous, just because you're near? That's the invisible shift happening. Your stillness, your sense of direction, it creates a frame, and the moment you walk in, others either match it, submit to it, or resist it. This is why emotional mastery matters, because if you're not centered, their reactions can pull you off balance. Some will test you subtly, some will try to get a reaction, some will try to put you in a box to feel safe again. But a man who understands his presence doesn't need to play their game. He doesn't shrink, he doesn't overcompensate, he lets the energy sit. He owns his silence, he moves slowly. That alone makes people adjust, and women, they notice this instantly. When your presence walks in like a storm that's calm, they can sense the difference. It's rare, it's powerful. You don't need to prove, you just are. Ever noticed how sometimes people start explaining themselves to you, even when you didn't ask? Like suddenly they feel the need to justify every little thing. I wasn't ignoring you, I was just busy. I didn't mean it that way. Or they start giving you unnecessary backstories, as if your silent presence was a spotlight shining on them. Why does that happen? Why do people feel the urge to clear the air around someone who didn't even question them? Why do some start nervously laughing, oversharing, or even defending their actions when all you did was stand there? Why do they treat your calm like a mirror that forces them to explain what's behind their mask? Here's the truth. Your energy exposes insecurities without saying a word. This is the third powerful sign that your presence intimidates people. See, most people wear invisible armor. They rely on small talk, charm, group validation, or loudness to cover the soft spots inside. But when they stand in front of someone who isn't playing the same noisy game, someone who is self-contained, emotionally steady, and not chasing approval, that armor starts to crack. They feel seen, not because you're judging, but because your stillness gives their mind nowhere to hide. Their nervous explanations, their sudden oversharing, that's their subconscious trying to fill the silence that your grounded energy creates. Let me give you a simple example. Imagine two men standing face to face. One is jittery, constantly moving, filling gaps with words. The other stands still, breathing slow, eyes calm, not needing to prove. Who holds the power in that moment? It's not the one talking more, it's the one who doesn't flinch, because your presence doesn't feed their illusions, and that can feel uncomfortable. It forces them to face the reality they've been avoiding. They feel small, not because you made them, but because your energy doesn't bend to their performance. This is also why some people will misinterpret your detachment. They'll say you're cold or you're intimidating, when in reality, you're simply centered. You're not jumping through hoops to make everyone feel okay. You're not molding yourself to fit every room. And in a world addicted to performance, your authenticity becomes a mirror. This is where emotional mastery plays a huge role. Because when their insecurities surface, some will try to test you. They'll say subtle things to get a reaction. They'll use jokes to pull you into their emotional storm. They might even question your intentions just to regain control of the frame. But the man who knows his presence doesn't take the bait. He doesn't argue to prove he's kind. He doesn't explain himself to make others feel safe. He stays rooted, calm, not cold but solid. And guess what happens next? Those who have depth will respect that. They'll adjust. Those who are insecure will either project or slowly fall silent because their usual tricks don't work. Women feel this even more intensely when your presence reveals their emotional state, not through words, but through how they react around you. It creates a subtle tension, not the kind that pushes them away, the kind that makes them lean in, intrigued, almost challenged, because your energy sets a standard. It doesn't chase, it doesn't explain, it simply reflects. And here's the beautiful part. When you live like this consistently, your mere existence filters your environment. People who can't handle truth will distance themselves. People who respect strength will stay and level up. Your energy does the work, silently, powerfully. So ask yourself, are you unconsciously bending your frame just to make others comfortable? You ever noticed how sometimes when you walk into a room, the whole energy shifts, and not because you said anything? People glance quickly, then look away. Conversations become slightly awkward. Someone starts cracking jokes louder than usual. Someone else gets oddly defensive over small things. And you're standing there wondering, I didn't even say a word. What just happened? Why do some rooms tense up the moment you enter? Why do certain people start behaving like they have something to prove when you weren't even challenging them? Why does your quiet presence make others feel like they need to perform? Why do they subtly compete, compare, or even throw tiny jabs like they're trying to shrink you down to their comfort zone? Here's the truth most never realize. Your presence carries weight when you've built yourself. When a man starts living with clarity, purpose, emotional control, and silent strength, his energy becomes undeniable, and that energy doesn't always make people cheer. Sometimes it shakes them. This is the fourth sign that your energy intimidates people. They feel the unspoken pressure to measure up around you. Let's break it down. Most people go through life with a kind of emotional autopilot. They don't really examine their habits, their mindset, or their inner state. They rely on external validation, group identity, and surface-level interactions to feel stable. But when someone with a solid inner world walks in, someone who doesn't need to prove through words, status games, or flashy distractions, that silent contrast is felt. It's like holding a cheap plastic ruler next to a steel one. The difference isn't loud, but it's obvious. And for some people, that difference stings. They start subconsciously comparing themselves to you, not because you're showing off, but because your energy exposes the gap between who they are and who they want to be. Some will feel inspired by it, others will feel threatened. That's when subtle behaviors show up. The jokester who starts making sarcastic remarks about you. The know-it-all who suddenly tries to challenge your statements, even about small things. The one who acts overly cool, almost dismissive, like they're trying to prove they're not impressed. Or the one who tries to outshine you in every conversation, even when there's nothing to compete over. All of this isn't really about you, it's their internal insecurity trying to balance the scales, because deep down, they feel your grounded presence, and it reminds them of what they haven't built in themselves. This is why detachment matters so much here. If you react emotionally to every jab, you feed their need for control. If you try to shrink yourself to make them feel better, you weaken your frame. And if you start explaining, over-validating, or constantly reassuring, you send the signal that their approval matters more than your peace. The Stoic path is different. You hold your ground without hostility. You don't try to outshine, you don't play their game, and you definitely don't get pulled into emotional tug-of-wars. You let your energy speak, and you allow their reaction to reveal them. And here's where it gets powerful. When you stay rooted while others scramble to match or challenge your presence, it sets a psychological hierarchy, not one built on ego or dominance, but one built on inner stability. People feel that hierarchy, even if they can't explain it. Women especially sense this deeply. When your energy sets a quiet, unwavering standard, it separates you from the noise. They instinctively lean toward the man whose self-worth doesn't depend on the room. Not because you're trying to impress, but because your presence forces clarity in them and in everyone else. So the next time someone tries to subtly compete, challenge, or shrink your vibe, don't fall for the trap. See it for what it is, a sign that your energy carries weight. Not everyone can stand calmly in the presence of a man who's built himself. The key isn't to shrink, it's to stay grounded. Because your job isn't to make everyone feel comfortable, your job is to live with quiet power and let the room adjust accordingly. Have you ever noticed someone suddenly becoming too polite around you? Their tone softens unnaturally. They agree with almost everything you say, even when it's just casual talk. They laugh a little too quickly at your jokes. They offer help you didn't ask for, and sometimes they even start treating you like they're walking on eggshells without you ever raising your voice. Why do certain people become overly agreeable in your presence? Why does your silence make them second-guess their words? Why do they smile nervously when you look their way? Why do they seem to adjust their behavior just to avoid making a wrong impression? And why does your calm energy make them act like they need to earn your approval, even when you never demanded it? Here's the truth most people never talk about. When your energy carries authority without force, some people unconsciously shift into pleaser mode. They become overly agreeable or unnaturally nice, not from genuine warmth, but from a subtle fear of being rejected or judged by you. Let's break it down deeply. Most people navigate social interactions using approval-seeking as their compass. They adjust their words, actions, and even beliefs to avoid friction and gain acceptance. This is especially common in environments where strong personalities are present. When a man has developed inner certainty, calm dominance, people subconsciously sense, this person doesn't need my approval, so I need theirs. This flips the power dynamic. Suddenly, they're not evaluating you, they're evaluating themselves through your eyes. Every pause you take feels like silent judgment. Every calm nod feels like quiet approval. Every direct gaze feels like a subtle test. That's when the pleasing behaviors start. They become overly respectful, even deferential. They offer unnecessary favors. They agree just to align with your energy. They lower their tone, soften their words, and try to blend with your presence like a chameleon trying to avoid danger. But here's the key insight most men miss. This kind of behavior isn't real respect. It's preemptive submission. It's a protective mechanism, not genuine admiration. And if you misread this kind of behavior, you can easily fall into one of two traps. 1. The ego trap. You start enjoying the attention and the silent power, feeding your self-worth through their reactions. This makes your identity dependent on how others behave around you, which ironically weakens your frame. 2. The savior trap. You start over-explaining, over-validating, or trying to make them feel comfortable all the time. This subtly flips the power back, because now you're the one chasing their comfort, not leading through grounded presence. The Stoic path offers a third way. Hold steady without indulging or compensating. When someone becomes overly agreeable around you, it's not your job to fix their discomfort. It's their internal state responding to your stability. You don't need to puff up your chest. You don't need to soften your edges unnaturally. You simply stay anchored. Here's the deeper layer. Your grounded energy creates invisible standards. People sense that you don't tolerate fake, performative energy. Not because you said it, but because your presence makes them look inward. And when someone's identity is built on external validation, they instinctively slip into people-pleasing mode as a survival tactic. This can happen in many places. In friendships, where someone starts agreeing with all your opinions, even when they're unsure. At work, where colleagues suddenly become hyper-polite or avoid giving honest feedback. In dating, where a woman mirrors everything you say and does everything to avoid seeming wrong, not because she's deeply aligned, but because she doesn't want to lose your approval. This is subtle but powerful. True respect allows for honesty, disagreement, and authenticity. Fear-based agreement creates a fragile dynamic, one where people suppress their real thoughts just to stay in your good graces. So what's the Stoic response? You maintain presence without overreacting. You give space for others to show their real self without rewarding fake alignment. And you never confuse niceness with loyalty, honesty, or strength. This is where emotional calibration becomes crucial. A high-value man knows how to distinguish between genuine respect and nervous compliance. He doesn't shrink to make people feel safe, and he doesn't inflate his ego when people act impressed. He stays neutral, watchful, and composed, because true power doesn't need to be validated. Here's the twist. When you consistently embody this kind of steady energy, something amazing happens over time. The ones who were meant to rise will slowly stop pleasing and start standing beside you with strength. The ones who weren't will keep performing, and both outcomes give you clarity without you having to say a single word. Ever walked into a room and without saying a word, you can feel someone's energy shift? Their shoulders stiffen, their eyes narrow slightly, their jokes suddenly have a little bite in them. They start acting like they have something to prove, even though you haven't challenged them at all. Why does this happen? Why do some people suddenly become defensive, sarcastic, or oppositional in your presence? Why do they roll their eyes at your calmness? Why do they question your every word? Not because they disagree, but because they want to test you. Why do they feel the need to compete with a man who's not even playing the game? And most importantly, what does this say about the kind of energy you carry? This is sign 6 that your energy intimidates people. Some individuals will subconsciously rebel against your presence, not because you're arrogant, but because your groundedness exposes their insecurity. Let's break this down. Most people build their sense of value through comparison. They unconsciously measure themselves against whoever is around them. When they're in a group of people who are loud, chaotic, or trying to prove themselves, they blend right in. But when they encounter someone who doesn't need to prove anything, someone who moves slowly, speaks with calm certainty, and radiates inner control, something inside them twitches. It's almost like holding up a mirror they didn't ask for. Your presence reflects their own lack of centeredness. Their ego senses a silent threat. Not a physical one, a status one, a psychological one. And instead of facing that feeling with maturity, some people go into defense mode. They start making little sarcastic remarks. They challenge your words in unnecessary ways. They jokingly try to undermine your authority. They interrupt you mid-sentence just to reclaim the spotlight. They argue over minor details just to win something back. Have you ever experienced that? A coworker who suddenly tries to one-up you in meetings, a friend who starts making playful but pointed jokes about your seriousness, a woman who starts testing your emotional control by pushing small buttons, not out of malice, but to see if you'll crack. This isn't random, it's psychological. Calm energy can feel like dominance to an ungrounded ego. When a man doesn't chase approval, doesn't overtalk, doesn't flinch emotionally, it unsettles those who rely on external validation for their worth. Here's the key insight. Their resistance is not actually against you, it's against the feeling you awaken inside them, that uncomfortable contrast between your stillness and their noise. This is where a lot of men mess up. They think, why is this person attacking me? Did I do something wrong? No, you didn't. You simply showed up with stable energy, and their ego interpreted that as a silent challenge. There are 3 common forms this resistance takes. 1. Subtle defiance. They become contrarian. Whatever you say, they'll find a counterpoint. Even if it's trivial, it's their way of proving I'm not impressed. 2. Sarcastic undermining. They use humor as a weapon. Oh look, Mr. Calm has arrived, or careful, he's too serious for jokes. They try to chip away at your presence through playful mockery. 3. Competitive posturing. They start subtly trying to outshine you. Louder stories, more extreme opinions. They rush to assert dominance where none was being contested. All of these are ego responses, and here's the Stoic lesson. You cannot control someone else's reaction to your presence, but you can control how deeply their reaction touches your peace. Many men make the mistake of either shrinking to avoid conflict, maybe I should act less intense, or puffing up to fight back, I need to show them who's boss. Both are emotional traps. One weakens your frame, the other turns calm strength into performative aggression. The higher path is this: observe without absorbing. When someone rebels against your energy, you treat their reaction as information, not a threat. You don't need to prove your worth. You don't need to defend your calmness. Their resistance is a mirror of them, not a verdict on you. And interestingly, once they realize they can't shake your presence, their rebellious energy either escalates briefly, then burns out, or it softens into genuine respect. In social dynamics, your detachment is what allows this process to unfold naturally. If you get reactive, you feed their ego battle. If you stay grounded, you starve the conflict of oxygen. This is the paradox. Your energy can intimidate people so much that they try to fight it, but the moment you don't fight back, they're left wrestling with themselves, and that's exactly where your true power lies. This is why emotional mastery is so critical. If you let other people's projections dictate your reactions, you become their puppet. But if you can stand firm in your silence, your purpose, and your presence, resistance eventually reveals who's strong and who's performing strength. Have you ever noticed you say nothing? You simply walk in, sit down, look, and suddenly they start talking, explaining, justifying, filling the silence. It's strange, isn't it? You didn't accuse them, you didn't interrogate, you didn't even ask, but it's like your presence alone flipped a switch inside them. Why does this happen? Why do some people suddenly give long-winded explanations about things you never questioned? Why do they nervously defend decisions you didn't even bring up? Why do they rush to fill the quiet, like they can't stand being in a space where your energy is steady and theirs is restless? And what does it say about the impact you have without even trying? This is sign 7 that your energy intimidates people. Your silence makes others over-explain themselves because your presence triggers their own self-evaluation. Let's dig deeper. In most social interactions, people rely on external cues to know how they're being perceived. They look for smiles, nods, constant chatter, validation to feel safe or accepted. But when they encounter someone whose energy is calm, detached, and not chasing approval, something inside them gets loud. Your silence acts like a mirror. not a soft mirror, a clear, almost uncomfortable one. Because you're not rushing to make them feel okay, you're not performing social dances to smooth over their nerves. You're simply there, present, unmoved, observant. And here's what happens. Their mind starts talking where you didn't. It starts questioning. Do they think I'm lying? Did I say something wrong? Are they judging me? Why aren't they reacting like everyone else? Do they see through me? And in that discomfort, they start talking more, explaining more, filling every quiet second. Because your silence silently says, I see you, even if you never actually say it. Have you ever noticed this in conversations with someone who's slightly insecure or unsure of themselves? You give a short answer, and suddenly they launch into a 10-minute explanation to clarify. You just nod slowly and they panic, as if your calmness means disapproval. They tell you every detail, every justification, whilst of go, this speaker for nokkafi kelst kultia wad kan for up to pul, you kadavda koring ni code pul kofik. As if they must earn your understanding. This is not arrogance on your part, this is psychological gravity. Your stillness pulls out whatever is already inside them. Think about how rare this is in today's world. Most people can't stand silence. Most people equate calm with disinterest. Most people are so used to constant emotional feedback that when they meet someone who isn't feeding their ego, their own inner voice grows louder. Our energy creates that silence. Not awkward silence, powerful silence. The kind of silence where truth starts to surface, not because you demand it, but because they can't hide behind noise anymore. This effect becomes even stronger when you live with purpose and emotional control. You don't fidget, you don't rush to respond, you don't bend to fill space, and this quiet confidence unsettles those who rely on external reactions to define their own worth. This is why women often find such energy deeply attractive and equally intimidating. A man who doesn't react to every emotional wave is hard to read. His attention feels valuable because he doesn't give it away cheaply. His silence doesn't come from social awkwardness, it comes from self-assuredness. When a woman feels this, her natural instinct is to either lean in to seek that validation through more communication, or feel slightly exposed, like her usual tactics don't land. For men, this is where detachment becomes powerful. You're not silent as a manipulation tactic. You're silent because you don't need to explain yourself constantly. You're silent because you're comfortable with yourself, and that comfort creates an environment where others reveal themselves, sometimes more than they intended. The Stoics understood this well. True power isn't loud. True power doesn't constantly announce itself. It sits, it observes, it lets reality unfold. And when your energy is strong, stable, and detached, people around you start to reveal their mental states through how they handle your quiet presence. Some will start oversharing, some will nervously explain themselves, some will even confess things they didn't plan to. Why? Because your calm creates the space where truth feels louder than words. This is where many men misunderstand their role. They think they must constantly talk more to be liked, but often the opposite is true. It's your silence that makes you memorable. It's your presence that makes people evaluate themselves. And it's your emotional control that turns conversations into revelations. So the next time you notice someone over-explaining, don't interrupt. Don't fill the space. Let them speak. Because in that space, they're not reacting to you. They're reacting to themselves. Have you noticed something strange? People around you start changing, not because you told them to, not because you demanded it, they just act differently. Why does this happen? Why do some people suddenly change their tone, their words, their pace, almost unconsciously when you're around? Why do colleagues, friends, or even strangers walk on eggshells near you without you doing anything? Why do they suddenly become more careful, more polite, more deliberate? As if your presence is a measuring stick for their every move. This is sign 108 that your energy intimidates people. People adjust their behavior around you, often without realizing it. Think about it. Have you ever walked into a room and felt that subtle shift? The laughter becomes lighter, the chatter slows down, the joking feels measured, even eye contact is careful, cautious. It's not manipulation. It's not you trying to control them, it's your natural energy projecting authority and self-assurance. Your calm confidence sends signals their mind picks up on instantly. Signals that say, this person doesn't need validation, they are self-contained, they are steady. Are we okay in their presence? Why does this make people uneasy? Because most people are not emotionally stable. Most people rely on reactions from others to navigate their social world. They fear judgment. They fear disapproval. And when someone's energy doesn't give easy feedback, when you are not seeking to please them, their instinct is to adjust, to adapt, to tread carefully. Have you ever tried to analyze it? Why do some people suddenly become extra polite around certain men, even men they barely know? Why do people mirror your actions subtly, like you are the pace setter of the room? Why do they hesitate before speaking, choosing their words with unusual caution? It's because your detachment communicates boundaries, whether you want it to or not. Your presence establishes a subtle hierarchy of self-possession. People instinctively sense you are not easy to manipulate, you are not desperate for approval, you are not desperate to be liked. And here's where it gets interesting. This subtle energy doesn't just intimidate, it creates respect. It doesn't demand it, it doesn't shout it, it simply exists, and others respond. But let's pause. Why do so many men miss this? Why do so many men think intimidating energy is a flaw, or that people avoiding them is a problem? Why do they chase validation, overcompensate, or try to be liked, instead of understanding that this reaction is a natural response to their own energy? Because they misunderstand social dynamics. They confuse reaction with rejection. They see people adjusting behavior as hostility instead of a mirror of their own impactful energy. When you understand that your energy is powerful simply because it is steady, when you realize that people adjusting themselves is actually a sign that you are in control of your inner state, not theirs. This is why detachment works, why emotional mastery matters, why living a life of purpose without needing constant approval projects a magnetic presence. Your calm, confident, self-contained energy becomes a silent command. I am fine with myself. I don't need your validation. Because I'm not chasing you. And guess what? People notice, they adapt, they respect, they are drawn to the consistency and power you carry. This effect amplifies when combined with absence and boundaries. You're not forcing attention, you're not chasing reactions, you simply exist with self-possession, and the world, your friends, colleagues, even romantic interests respond accordingly. Questions to ask yourself: how often do people subtly adjust their behavior around me? Am I aware of my natural energy influencing those around me? Do I feel the room shift when I enter, even slightly? Could my calm, steady detachment be creating silent respect and sometimes subtle intimidation? How can I use this awareness to strengthen my purpose, emotional control, and genuine confidence? This is the covert power of your energy. You don't have to dominate conversations, prove yourself, or constantly give approval. Your presence alone, grounded in detachment and self-worth, is enough to create a magnetic and intimidating effect. And here's the key: the more you live with purpose, calmness, and scarcity of availability, the more pronounced this effect becomes. It's natural, it's effortless, it's stoic mastery in action. Ever noticed how some men just exist, and yet the room responds? No forced charm, no chasing, no proving themselves. They're not trying to impress, they're not performing, and somehow people feel it. This is sign 9. Your energy influences others even without words. The most powerful men I've seen, not the loudest, not the richest, not the flashiest, have this in common: they don't need to explain themselves, they simply are. Why does this matter? Why does this matter for attraction, influence, and even peace in your life? Because it's the final piece of the puzzle. Everything we've talked about so far, detachment, emotional mastery, purpose, scarcity, calm confidence, it all leads here. This is where your internal state becomes external influence. Think about it. Have you ever been around someone who doesn't speak much but somehow commands attention? Their opinions matter more, their presence is felt, they don't ask for respect, they don't chase approval, and yet everyone notices, reacts, and respects the boundaries they naturally carry. The question is, how do you get there without trying too hard? How do you reach that effortless magnetic energy? It starts with a truth most men ignore. You can't control how others respond. You can only control yourself. Ask yourself, am I living my life for myself or for the reactions of others? Am I practicing detachment, not to manipulate, but to maintain my peace? Do I prioritize my purpose, my growth, my mastery over temporary validation? Am I aware of how my calm, composed energy impacts others? Here's the solution, the ultimate fix that ties all the signs together. Fourthly, focus on your purpose, not on attention. A man with purpose doesn't need to chase validation. He's already fully engaged with his own life. That energy naturally attracts others. To live with emotional mastery, feel your emotions, understand them, let them guide you, not control you. Calmness is magnetic. People trust it. Women respect it. 3. Use absence strategically, not to play games, but to prioritize your life. Being less available increases value naturally. It gives others space to desire your presence and makes your presence feel powerful. Build real confidence. Competence plus self-approval creates confidence that isn't dependent on material things or external validation. That confidence radiates in energy and body language. 5. Observe, don't react. Notice the subtle cues in others, how they adjust, how they respond, but don't let it dictate your behavior. Your power comes from self-possession, not their reactions. Here's the truth. When you combine all these: purpose, emotional mastery, absence, confidence, self-possession, you become naturally magnetic. People notice, people respect, people are drawn to you. And here's the kicker. It doesn't feel like work. It doesn't feel like manipulation. It feels like living your life fully, peacefully, and powerfully. So if you've been following this script from page 1 to page 10, here's the takeaway. Ron needs the signs you've noticed: subtle intimidation, admiration, cautious behavior from others are not problems. They're proof. Proof that your energy matters. Proof that your detachment, calm, and self-worth are working. They show that your presence is powerful and that people naturally respond to your energy when you live correctly. No chasing, no proving, no games, just self-mastery, presence, and purpose. And that, my friend, is the covert Stoic fix for natural attraction, influence, and peace. It's already inside you. You just needed to see it, understand it, and apply it consistently. The solution isn't outside approval. It's inside you, in your energy, your calm, your purpose, and your confidence. Now ask yourself, am I going to live my life for validation or for power, peace, and self-mastery? Because once you do this, the world and the people around you will adjust naturally, and that is unstoppable.